Coming up next on Insights on PBS Hawaii, what are the threats to Hawaii's ocean waters? Aloha and welcome to Insights on PBS Hawaii. I'm Malia Mattoch. Our warm ocean waters are home to thousands of species of fish, sharks, and coral that provide food and protection to our islands. But many believe overfishing, land-based pollution, and global warming are threatening the ocean's vital balance. How can we become better stewards of our ocean resources? Is it too late to restore the health of our reefs, bring back nearshore fish populations, and ensure cultural access for future generations? What are the threats to Hawaii's ocean waters? We invite you to join our conversation by calling, emailing, or tweeting your questions and comments. Now to our guest. Leighton Taylor is a world-renowned expert on sharks and is the author of Sharks of Hawaii. He served as Waikiki Aquarium's third director, and in 1976, with the help of the United States Navy, he discovered a new species, popularly called the megamouth shark. Ruth Gates is a researcher at the Hawaii Institute of Marine Biology on Coconut Island in Kaneohe Bay. She studies coral biology and their sensitivity to thermal stress, ocean acidification, and pollutants. William Isla is the chairman of the State Department of Land and Natural Resources, which oversees 1.3 million acres of state land and 3 million acres of submerged ocean lands. Sean Martin is a fisherman and president of the Hawaii Longline Association, which advocates for longline fishing. Sean is also co-founder of POP Fishing and Marine, a commercial fishing supply company. Welcome all. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. William, may we start with you. From the Department of Land and Natural Resources perspective, what are the main issues that we're facing right now in terms of the ocean?
Well, with the legislature in, we have legislatively defined issues. So we have the ni'ihau, subsistence fishing zones that are being proposed. We have beach erosion. We have coral reef protection. We have, at our own initiatives, we have the streamlining of the repair and restoration of fish ponds throughout the state of Hawaii. We have, of course, in the news, absent from the news recently, discussions on shark bites versus shark attacks, and we can get into discussion on what that means. We have access issues to the ocean. We have, of course, discussions about whether or not fish stocks are healthy or not healthy in certain areas, and then which fish stocks are we referring to when that question comes up. Those are just a sampling of the issues that deal in our faces.
Well, let's start with overfishing. Not just an issue in Hawaii, an issue across the world right now. Leighton, could you speak to that in terms of where we stand on overfishing? And I know Sean will want to talk to you as well. Are we seeing a significant decline in terms of fish numbers?
Yes, but I think it's important to distinguish how diverse the fishery is in Hawaii. I mean, we have everything from opihi on the intertidal, which are being talked about at the legislature because their stocks are so reduced, all the way across the coral reefs, the nearshore waters, and then out to the pelagic zone where longline fishermen go far away to fish. And I think there's an argument that can be made that in each one of those sub-ecosystems, there's overfishing. Department of Aquatic Resources biologists, UH biologists, NOAA biologists have done analyses of catch records and of actual on-the-ground counts of fishes and come up with, can I quote something from one of the Department of Aquatic Resources report? This one report, refereed and published report, some of what was published. Over 1/4 of the species examined in the main Hawaiian Islands, and these are inshore species, reef fishes, appeared to be depleted below 10% of unfished abundance. And they measured unfished abundance by looking at the northwest Hawaiian Islands, which are not fished anymore for coral reef fishes. So, you know, that's like 90% are gone is what they're saying. While 42% of the fish they looked at were below 25% of unfished abundance. So as far as the nearshore, I think we need to do a lot of work. And Sean, I think, is probably much better qualified to talk about offshore fishes.
Sean, could you address that for us? How
Well,
much
sure.
of an issue is that?
Yes, pelagic fish, offshore fish, there are some concerns with some stocks. I think it's important to recognize that these offshore stocks are really impacted internationally. So the Hawaii longline fishery, for example, fishes side by side with many different Asian countries and other countries who are kind of impacting the same stock. In the case of pelagic fishes that we fish for here in Hawaii, in the Hawaii longline fishery, there's some concern about striped marlin. Overfishing is occurring, and there's a differentiation between overfishing and overfished. So overfishing, taking an unsustainable amount of fish that, if not contained, will result in overfished. We operate under an international quota for big eye, which of course is the target species that everybody enjoys for their sashimi and sushi. And so there are concerns with a couple of stocks within the range of where we fish. Generally, there's pretty strong management plans in place internationally, but not all the countries have the same dedication to conservation that the U.S. demonstrates.
I was shocked by a number I read. Hawaii longliners take less than 5,000 tons of big eye compared to 70,000 of outside industrial boats.
Yeah, the Hawaii longline fishery represents, in the Western Pacific, there's two different convention areas that we call it, but the Hawaii fishery really takes about 3% of the big eye in the Western Pacific. So, and we're a very small fishery in numbers of vessels, having to do with, back in the day, William and I sparred, I guess you'd say, in developing some of these management plans back in the early 90s. And but there are species that are of concern, and I do think that many of the management regulations that were put into effect, we're benefiting from those because we do have a constrained fishery that in most circles is thought of as a pretty well managed fishery.
And there's nothing that can be done on a state level in terms of what's happening with the international operations, correct?
I would say that the Hawaii longline fleet has certainly instituted some very good management changes, and so it would be hard to pinpoint the Hawaii longline fleet as the cause of overfishing of big eye. I think you have to take a look at the larger fleets, the transition of purse seiners to fishing around fads and taking much increased numbers of juvenile big eye. That is probably the biggest change that has occurred over the last 20 years, having the greatest impact. And both domestic purse seiners as well as international purse seiners.
And that's hard for us to control.
It is. This happens at a multi-government level, and
Right. Yeah, in the case of the commission that regulates most of the area that we fish in, there's 28 countries at the table, and getting 28 countries to agree on something is a pretty difficult task.
I want to ask William, you mentioned fads, fish aggregating devices that are anchored and like buoys and fish come around them. Does the state maintain those, or is that a federal thing?
Well, the state maintains, I think, 26 fads across the state of Hawaii. The federal government is in the process of approving some fads in federal waters. I was referring to the fads that are placed in international waters by purse seiners with helicopters. They can find them fairly easily.
I see.
I mean, it's so scientific that they actually have the ability to transmit data. So they put them out there, they let them float around. As they determine that it's worthwhile fishing, they send the helicopter out to go find it. The boat comes by, surrounds it, and unfortunately, one of the not so good outcomes is a significant number of juvenile big-eyed tuna are taken.
Which is what they're not even going after, right?
No, and this is the stuff that ends up in the cans that we eat as canned tuna.
Right. Speaking of bycatch fish or animals that are caught inadvertently, isn't that a problem for longliners catching Pseudorca, particularly the marine mammal species that's pretty
Yeah,
special around here.
That's currently a topic that that is of concern to fishery managers and regulators as well as the industry. There is interactions with what we call false killer whales, and there are recent regulations. They've been in effect for about a year and a half now, having to do with certain hooks that we can use, strength of the hook, style of the hook, size of the line. Those have proven to be somewhat effective at reducing the interactions with these false killer whales. But and I would say that the industry is very proactive in trying to help develop methodologies to learn more about the animals. They're smart critters, and it's not an easy task, but there's a significant amount of effort.
Ruth, let's get to your area of interest in terms of coral reefs. We mentioned global warming in the introduction. How is that impacting? What sort of challenges are we seeing for reefs in light of that?
So what we're seeing is gradual increases in temperature on the reef, and corals are extremely thermally sensitive. An increase in temperature is essentially drives a decline in the relative health of corals. So they are dependent on a plant or unicellular plants that live inside them. And when they get hit by temperature disturbances, elevations particular, they will lose their little plants and turn white, and they can die, and often do. And so as we get global warming intensifies or climate change intensifies, we're seeing increasing temperatures and greater numbers of bleaching events and mortalities on reefs that are essentially degrading the habitat.
Could you explain the project that you're working on right now? I find it
Absolutely.
incredibly fascinating.
Well, you know, there's been a lot of discussion about how by 2050 we may lose all our reefs. That is a sort of party line that has been put out, and that fails to recognize that on the reefs there are a number of individuals, different species or individuals within species, that seem to be doing quite well in conditions that kill others. And so the question is why? Our project really, we're looking at those super corals, the corals that are withstanding very challenging conditions, and trying to understand the biology underlying that ability to withstand stress well enough such that we can harness it through selective breeding to actually develop stocks of corals conditioned to the future ocean. That is warmer and, of course, let's not forget, more acidic. So we also have changes in ocean chemistry that are happening in parallel with elevating temperatures that are also a product of increasing loads of CO2 in the atmosphere.
So worst case scenario, if, for example, Hawaii, we saw massive amounts of our coral reefs die because of global warming, the idea of your project is that you could find sort of those that could survive those conditions, and then would you take those, sort of incubate them, and then graft them onto the dead reefs?
So that's exactly what we would do. Essentially, we would have breeding stocks, much like seed banks, where we would maintain these stocks in a location, either on the reef in natural habitat or in laboratory stocks, or cryogenically suspended, that we could essentially bring out to use to either build resilience, build new reefs on naked reef structure that's been damaged, or on concrete structures that are being used to harden and protect the land against the degradation of the habitat, because coral reefs are critically important as storm barriers. And so they not only serve as fish habitat, it's the storm, the wave energy breakage that they really basically reduce the energy coming on shore. It's critical when the majority of our population really lives close to the ocean.
Erosion and everything else. So in a way, it's sort of a Noah's Ark for coral?
Yes, I think that's a good way of thinking about it. It's thinking about an adaptive strategy. It's not, we understand, I understand that we have to mitigate the problem. That is increasing loads of CO2, heavy human use patterns, uncontrolled storm water, big sediment loads. These are all things that are happening as a result of climate change and our changes in the use of our lands. And I think that's an issue that we have to address those issues. But if we wait until policy changes CO2 loads, for example, we may have no reefs to actually work with. And so I think we advocate the position that it's time to really act now to develop biological capacity that could be used in a mitigative circumstance to adapt to the changing landscape, rather than waiting until we have no corals left to actually work with.
We saw some, I'm sorry, I was going to actually.
I wanted to ask William, the state, your department, has already been involved with
We have actually started up a coral nursery along the similar line, so we look forward to more collaboration. But the point here, I think that Ruth is making is we're not standing by and waiting. We're taking a proactive stance and aggressively going out
Absolutely.
ahead of time.
How did that stock, I guess you could call it stock enhancement, where there was a big shipwreck damage, the Royal something or other?
Port Royal.
Port Royal, and the state went out as a mitigation and planted a lot of juvenile corals. Is that right? How's that working out?
We've planted some in that area. We've planted some in other areas. We actually have an in-laboratory coral nursery right now. We actually have before the Army Corps of Engineers very shortly a mitigation bank that's planned for these unplanned events where we would actually go out and create strategies for increasing coral or maintaining coral. A good example, of course, is the sea urchin outplanting that's occurring in Kaneohe Bay in conjunction with the super sucker. The results there have been fantastic. We have upped our production of juvenile sea urchins to, I think this month we will hit a total of 200,000 sea urchins. So making very good headway in terms of the production of short-spined sea urchins for other mitigation measures also.
Because we've also seen a die-off in sea urchin populations, is that correct?
There have been a couple of instances recently.
Well, also, I think the strategy there is they're plant-eating animals, and there's algae in the bay we don't want, and so if they eat it, it does us a service. But I think we're really lucky in Hawaii. People, you know, we have a wonderful ocean and everything, but we also have a wonderful educational and research facilities here, like Dr. Gates represents, can work with the state in these kinds of mitigation matters. So, you know, when you look what we have here, even though things might be in a bad state, we could really make some positive changes.
We have a question coming in. If we put a total ban on nearshore fishing, how long would it take to bring the numbers back to where they used to be decades ago?
Well, I don't know that a total ban is going to do that. I mean, we have other sources of fish mortality, coral mortality, being some of the sedimentation that's occurring because the storms that we're facing are going to be more intense. So, you know, rain follows the forest. We're starting at the top of the mountain, trying to take care of the forest that we have to stop sedimentation, to increase water percolation. It's all of these strategies together that are going to move forward. Simply by putting a ban on the capture of marine resources doesn't take into account the full suite of influences that are leading to a decline both in fishery stocks as well as invertebrates too.
On the other hand, there's strong evidence, some by your own biologists, that marine protected areas that are off limits for fishing, can actually enhance the adjacent areas' fish stocks. So you can have better fishing in areas adjacent to marine protected areas, of which Hawaii has some and needs more. And to answer that question, just quickly, if you're talking about something like, I don't know, moi, a coolie, something like that, it wouldn't take very long at all. I mean,
It would come back.
It's fast growing.
yeah.
Here's a question from Mike from Hawai'i Kai to Mr. Isla. What will be done about jet skis and parasailing? They are damaging our nearshore coral reefs. May I ask you quickly, Ruth, before I turn to William, are they? Is that the case?
I think that the use patterns on reefs are changing, and there are a variety of different things that can have a negative impact. I think, you know, pinpointing one particular recreational activity, it's not easy to assign a causation based on one, observations of one or two incidents. Anchor drags probably are some of the more serious problems that we see on reefs. We see a lot of damage from anchors, and we see a lot of damage from people walking on the reef. And perhaps that would be the thing, I think, that is the most difficult to control, and yet is clearly very damaging. The very thing that many people come to see, they actually damage in the process of seeing it.
Inadvertently
Yes.
damage. And
I would ask the question this way. There are a lot more ocean uses that have been created in the last 50 years in Hawaii. And the jury is out on the impacts on all of those. So I would like to be able to say that we have an adequate amount of money to do the studies that are required to make that determination. Unfortunately, we don't have right now. There is some indication that, loud noises, jet streams can have a localized impact. We are looking at that in Mauna Bay. There are issues with permits that have been issued, and should we move an activity to another place, what is the impact on that new place that we move it to?
Then what happens? Okay, the shark questions are starting. Is there a way a mass text or email could be sent to the public when there is a shark sighting? This is from Kahalui. And does an abundance of turtles affect the number of shark attacks? Let's turn to our shark expert, Leighton. Turtles.
Well, Twitter.
Oh, for the first question,
The first
yes.
question, yeah.
And turtles?
Certainly, the kind of research that's being done in Hawaii at UH and also in California at Hopkins Marine Lab, Stanford's Hopkins Marine Lab, where they tag pelagic sharks and nearshore sharks. Kim Holland here at UH is tagging tiger sharks with his colleagues, and they can actually track them. And in Australia, they're doing the same thing, and they've actually figured out how to make it a Twitter message when a shark comes into a certain area. You can say, oop, not going in today, something like that. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I don't know how effective that is if the shark shows up when everybody's in the water already. They don't have their cell phones with them.
But whoever's on the beach watching them can shout
Baby
out.
alarm.
Well, I've been to
Yes.
Kaimana Beach recently. People are out there with their cell phones.
How many folks do you see in the water that have their cell phones? The surfers, the divers, the swimmers.
What about
right.
turtles?
What about turtles? Tiger sharks eat turtles, but they also eat lobsters. They also eat uhu and other reef fishes. I've heard, not argued, but declared that because we have so many turtles, and I'd like to get back to that in a minute, because we have so many turtles, tiger sharks are coming in, they're mistaking swimmers for turtles. I don't buy that myself. I think there's a lot of other reasons for higher incidence of what some people say is higher incidence of shark attacks.
Those being, what would you identify as the reasons?
Well, there's been a lot of analysis of shark attacks, and as William pointed out earlier, there are different reasons for sharks attacking. But there's been a lot of analysis about, what causes shark attacks? Is it depth of water? Is it color of your bathing suit? Is it the yum yellow swim fins you got? I mean, that's what people, yum yellow swim fins. Is it because you're big, small? Some people say they always swim next to a fat person because they figure it gives them a better chance, but I don't think that's an analysis either. There's one thing that is known to attract sharks and is often involved with shark attack, and that's a human behavior that actually we encourage here in Waikiki, and that's spearfishing. The Waikiki Diamond Head fishery management area, which is a 2 years or 4 years on or off, where no spearfishing for 2 years, and then boom, it opens up again. And publications done by DAR and others have shown that those closed areas there on that rotating basis don't really work in building up fish numbers, but they do encourage this derby mentality of people going up on the opening days, the first few days, and spearing fish. And when we have people spearing fish in our major tourist asset, Waikiki Beach, and the first week in February, there was a tiger shark seen in the Hilton Hawaiian Village Channel. Kaimana Beach, where I swim almost daily, there was a tiger shark, seen by many people, took a line of speared fish. And I just don't think we ought to have that kind of behavior mixed in with our major tourist beaches.
Okay, William, any thoughts on that in terms of spearfishing?
People have been spearfishing in Waikiki for hundreds of years. a lot of them in the last 50 years, and we've not had an incident in Waikiki. So I would say anytime that you have blood in the water, that's a bad thing, whether the blood is from a fish or from a cut on your leg. And I think that probably has a greater influence on whether or not a shark shows any interest. So we have not had a significant, I think, incident in Waikiki, given the fact that we have huge numbers of people near shore. We've had spearfishing going on, like I said, at least for the last 50 years. Hawaiians have done it many, many times in the last probably 500 or 600 years. So I wouldn't necessarily equate it to just spearfishing. We definitely have more sharks now.
Do we know that? Have there been censuses done of shark numbers?
I think in
like to get
certain locales, I don't think that there's been a statewide shark count. But I think if you ask people that have been in the water for the last 20, 30 years, they will certainly tell you that there appear to be more sharks around right now, both smaller sandbar sharks, etc., as well as tiger sharks.
I know we're going to get back to sharks a lot. Sean?
I just wanted to touch on something because when you introduced the section, it was sharks and turtles, and I wanted to ask the turtle expert. You know, I think that there's controversial discussions about limited cultural take of green sea turtles, given the fact that the population has recovered somewhat. And I'm interested in a perspective on it. You could make a whole segment out of it, I understand, but just a kind of a...
Should we reopen hunting of green sea turtles?
Yeah, but I guess I wouldn't phrase it that way, because I do think it needs to be if it is at all, it needs to be very restrictive, and I'm talking about cultural, and
Sure.
I'm no expert on Hawaiian culture, but I think
the question hinges upon whether there's a distinct population in Hawaii. And so I know that the National Marine Fisheries Service is undergoing that review right now. It'll probably take another year for that to occur. So if Hawaii is not a distinct population, then it's going to be unlikely until the rest of the world experiences recovery that anyone will be allowed to take turtles. If Hawaii is a distinct population, then it becomes incumbent upon the state of Hawaii to come up with a management plan. And as you said, turtles take a long time to mature, to become sexually mature, and so it would be very easy to knock the numbers down if we didn't have a strong management plan in place.
And I would imagine it might open a bit of a Pandora's box in terms of then does that then open the door to sort of poaching issues, and where do you draw the line in terms of opening that up?
Well, the closest process that we have in place right now is for the deer hunts on the island of Lanai, where you have to put in for a lottery, and then you're issued a tag. And then when you get to shoot a deer, you have to take that tag with your deer to someone to verify that you're legally entitled to have that or possess that deer. So it would be something along those lines.
I've heard these conversations before, and a point that always gets brought up is the PR for Hawaii in terms of, because tourism is such a draw and the green sea turtle is quite a beloved animal, it does become potentially a bit of a public relations problem.
There's a related issue too, and you talked about lots of turtles, you talked about possible recovery. And, you know, people say, oh, you know, we're up to our coalies and turtles now, we should be able to fish them again. But that's relative, the lots and the recovery, because, you know, part of it is what's this shifting baseline error, you know, the fact that when you were in diapers and I was looking at my first Hawaiian shark in the eye back in the late 50s, early 60s, there were no humpback whales around here. You didn't see any humpback whales. So we grew up thinking humpback whales in Hawaii, big, not here, maybe in the old days. But now it's a major tourist draw. That's a, you know, so we were guilty, or I was at least, of that shifting baseline. When I was born, I think that's the way the world always was. So when we look at turtles now, we think, wow, there's a lot of turtles. And your children, you know, probably think that's how many turtles there were. But if you look at the historical data, we're still in trouble with turtles. I mean, one paper I've found, I'm not a turtle expert, by the way, and I've got friends out there who are probably laughing.
I probably know them.
Yeah. Anyway, these guys found that 80% of historically major nesting populations are extirpated. They're gone. And they did that all the way back to, they say, 1250 AD by looking at middens and things like that, looking at Hawaiian newspaper articles. And 90% of the green sea turtles that we do have nest in one place up in French Frigate that is in danger of inundation by sea level rise. Whale Skate little islet is already gone. They don't nest there anymore. So when people say green sea turtles have recovered and we should be able to hunt them now, I'd say, wait a minute, let's find out what that really means. I don't think they have recovered.
And we may be a ways off. For those of you just joining us tonight, we're asking, what are the threats to Hawaii's ocean waters? We invite you to join our conversation by calling, emailing, or tweeting your questions and comments. Call 973-1000 on Oahu and 800-283-4847 from the neighbor islands. Ruth, we have a question for you. From Larry on the North Shore, where does runoff from near ocean parking lots go? What does it do to the reef?
It's a great question. It goes straight onto the water and straight onto the reef, and we actually don't really know what the pollutants in that water are, and how quickly it flushes from the reef and gets diluted is really dependent on the coastal setting. So, for example, in Kaneohe Bay, we have quite a lot of retention of water. So when sediments wash in or pollutants wash into the bay, because of the circulation in the South Bay, it doesn't actually vent out into the open ocean very quickly, and there's sort of a residency time that has the potential to have very high impact on the reefs there. In very exposed reef settings, the waters flush off very quickly, and so that's very transient exposures, and probably those runoffs have very little effect on the reef. So it's a little bit complex depending on the setting and the roads and where the proximity of the road or the river inputs are as to what the relative impacts on the reef will be.
And is there anything we can do to mitigate that problem?
It's a really interesting question. I mean, I think that, there's many ways to control stormwater, and, you can build barriers, land barriers, essentially little humps of grass that will change the way that water moves. But we've put a lot of concrete down, and when you put a lot of concrete down, that concrete is basically non-porous. Before concrete, water hit the land and it would start to percolate through in multiple different locations. Now we sort of channel it into single point entry places because it's more convenient for us. And it's that huge volume of water and pollutants hitting the reef that is actually the problem. It's not that we have pollutants, it's that we put them in one place, that we may put them in a place that's convenient, like the south end of Kaneohe Bay. They stay there. So yes, I think we can mitigate. I think there are many ways in which stormwater is controlled in other states that could potentially be looked at as ways to move forward to address our stormwater problem and perhaps increase water conservation at the same time. So that we have many issues on lands that I think that could be, just looking at the reef, trying to protect the reef and using that as a really strong rationale for moving forward to some really major issues that we're facing on the island.
Malia, I have an idea for, for people watching right now and listening, so how they can help mitigate some of these problems. I got to put we're lucky in Hawaii to have not only good research and educational facilities, but also great community resources that are organized. And I got to put a plug in for my neighborhood community group, which is working on stormwater runoff, called Malama Maunalua, the caretakers of Maunalua Bay. They're working with the Hawaii Kai shopping centers and merchants like Kona Brewing Company to control their runoff. They're putting in rain gardens. They're putting in filters in the storm drains. Actually cleaning sediment out of the cement-lined channels. And it takes volunteers, and we have more than 3,000 volunteers helping us, and I know they'd like a lot more.
Right, so get involved. William, you were going to say.
I would also add that, these large cement channelized efforts were really based upon the question that was asked at the time in the 1960s. Yes. How do we get as much water off as quickly as possible without talking about the impacts? So we have this, I think, opportunity before us in the next probably 10 to 20 years as these structures need to be changed out. I think the average volunteer, the average person needs to demand of the engineers now a more environmentally appropriate way of moving water off the land.
What's a way to do that for someone out there who cares to demand it? Is it writing your legislator and getting in touch saying, is this an issue you're looking at? How does one?
Well, I think you can do it in a number of ways. You can educate your legislator. Right now, the Army Corps of Engineers would probably be the best people to write to going forward as they replace these channels, replace them with natural
And asking for that.
natural substances or gabins, as they're called. That might be a better way to provide strong protection as well as allow for infiltration. It also creates more surface area, so you have more opportunities for the ecosystem to rebound.
All right, good to know. We're getting a lot of questions now. I'm going to try to move through them, as many as I can. Sean, if I could direct this to you.
Sure.
Why doesn't the government enforce the 200-mile economic zone to the non-Hawaii fishing boats from Tom and Hilo?
Well, the 200-mile exclusive economic zone is an international line, so it's not just for Hawaii boats, it's for U.S. boats, so just to be clear. And I think that in my experience, they do a good job of enforcing that. As somebody who's on the water or speaks with many people that are on the water on a daily basis, it's a pretty rare event that we hear that there's any incursions by foreign fleets. So maybe there's a little bit of a misunderstanding there in how much there actually is.
All right. From Bill in Hilo, when does the state plan to institute marine life conservation districts in Hilo? William, any thought on that?
You know, I think if somebody brings to us a boundary area that they would like us to consider, the appropriate process is you write to the land board with the suggested area, and then our biologists will take a look at it, and if there is confirmation that the area is deserving, because a marine life conservation district talks about protecting special places. And so if the assessment is done and the place is determined to be special, then it goes to Chapter 91 rulemaking process through the land board, the appropriate public hearings, and then ultimate signing off by the governor.
Okay, another opportunity to get involved. For Dr. Ruth Gates, the coral used to refurbish reefs, is it native to Hawaiian waters? And then a question for Mr. Isla, but I'll ask that after you've answered.
Yes, so the corals that we're working with are all from Hawaii, and our goal is to develop coral stocks for Hawaii. And so it's a very good question. You know, corals are very different. The types of species that you find in Hawaii are different from reefs in other locations in the Pacific even. And so, you know, we're sort of taking a slightly genetic perspective to breeding, which is a new addition to sort of the suite of tools that we've used in the past to do coral farming activities. It's not new, coral farming. But generally, we've fragmented very large colonies into hundreds of small pieces, and that colony, if vulnerable to stress, the entire fleet, all 100 pieces, will die in the face of one stress. And so what we're attempting to do is to breed genetic diversity into the population such that we can build resilience. That's how you build resilience. So, but the answer is yes, all Hawaiian species.
All right, thank you. And a related question for Mr. Isla, are the nurturing spores around sunken ships native to Hawaii? And this is from
I think that was generated by a news story that U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service was removing some sunken wrecks off of Palmyra and some of those places, and they did find a non-native algae, and I think I'm not sure if it was a protozoan or something like that. To my knowledge, and we have done a lot of observations around the reefs, the artificial reefs that we have, some of which are made up of sunken steel boats and concrete boats, and we have not noticed any non-native species growing on them.
All right, thank you. A question for Sean. When are they going to bring up the minimum weight of ahi caught? Bill and Kona.
That's a good one. I think that's for near shore more than offshore, and for recreational, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. So I can't answer it. I think maybe it's on somebody else's plate. In the offshore pelagic fishery, we don't have size limits, but typically we don't see small ahi. So maybe that's not really a appropriate question for me to answer in the pelagic sense.
I think there's some science that's being sort of shopped around Hawaii right now that indicates that the average size for yellowfin tuna to be sold right now, state law is 3 pounds. That it would make more sense to raise that to somewhere around 12 pounds because more fish at that size tend to survive. And so you have the opportunity after basically banking for a couple of years, having larger tuna available theoretically to the local fleet, both inshore and offshore. And so that's the idea that's being shopped around right now. It'll take a lot more discussion amongst all of us here in Hawaii before we attempt to do something like that. But it's certainly a good idea to discuss.
Okay, Leighton, sharks are an aumakua for Native Hawaiians. Should they be protected? Sharks are protected, though. People cannot go out and kill a shark.
What are the
or
rules
can they?
about?
Right now, there are no rules against taking of sharks. There are rules against possessing shark fins, so you have to be very, very careful. The way that we sort of have an understanding with a shark caught in federal waters right now, which has to be landed with its fins on, otherwise it violates federal laws, is as they're brought to the United Fishing Agency, as long as the fins are removed prior to sale, then that's how the compliance with federal law and state law is occurring right now. So there's no prohibition on taking any sharks right now in Hawaii. In state waters, if you possess a shark with its fins on, then you are in violation.
Okay.
Well, the status of sharks as aumakua is one reason not to fish for them, but there are ecological reasons not to fish for them too, but we can talk about that later. But there's also a question about which species are aumakua. You know, people say, oh, shark's my aumakua. Well, which of the more than a dozen species? So people need to think about that too.
As we spoke earlier, you know, one of the consequences of history is 6 out of 10 Hawaiians probably dropped dead in a period of about 10 years. So much of the individual family knowledge was lost. As a consequence, you have fragments that have been passed on by Hawaii families who, as a sort of default, because they don't have the individual name and description of a shark that became their aumakua, and it could be any number of species,
Right.
depending on the family, the default is they prefer not taking any sharks just to be safe.
You're speaking of the population loss in the Native Hawaiian community during all
That's
the
correct.
epidemics of the
During all the
19th century, and so that knowledge wasn't passed on.
For many families. So for some families, that knowledge was clearly passed on, and they can tell you the individual name of their aumakua, who was an individual, and who's basically the equivalent of, you know, an ancestor, a great-great-great-great-grandfather or grandmother. So
This brings us to the subject of culls, which we should at least talk about briefly in this program. Australia has started to do a targeted shark hunt in response to shark attacks. It was done here at certain points of time. Is there any rationale for trying that again? If the number of shark attacks that we've experienced in the last 2 years turn out to not be an anomaly, they turn out to be a new reality, will there be sort of a popular pressure to do that? And
can I first make a distinction
Yeah.
between a shark attack and a shark bite?
Please,
Because I think
yeah.
it's very, very important that we understand. The 13 shark bites that we had last year were basically that. A shark came by and bit somebody and let go and swam off. A shark attack, in my mind, is more of an incident where the shark continues to come after the victim. And we have not had anything like that, as described to me, for about 20 years in Hawaii. So I'd like to make that distinction. The second one is, given all of the data that Kim Holland and his crew, Carl Meyer, have done, it really indicates that sharks, large tiger sharks, really pass through areas rather quickly. So the idea that you're going to catch the shark that had the interaction or did the bite is minimally scientifically
it might feel emotionally
credible.
Yeah.
reassuring to people to go out and get a shark, but it's not based on the science.
Based on the science that we have right now, the chances of catching that shark that had the interaction is minimal.
Right, and we have had culling programs in Hawaii. I mean, starting in '59 with the Billy Weaver young
In
surf-
Lanikai.
In Lanikai, at the Mokaluas, there was a big fishing program, and it, you know, went on and off through 1976. I think we killed more than 5,000 sharks. But if you look at the incident and attack data, and that's important to make that distinction. I'm glad he did it. It didn't seem to make any difference. And now we know probably why, which is that, as you say, they don't stick around. I mean, sharks bite for the same reason dogs do. 2 reasons. One, they're hungry, or they want you to get out of there. They don't like what you're doing. You know, mailman, get away. And that's usually what shark attacks are. Unfortunately, sometimes they're the eating variety, and that's where people die.
Get unlucky.
That's
right.
what I always worry about every time I get in the water. But
Yeah.
hey, that's me and everybody else.
Or you get bit in a vein or an aorta, right? So
And you get unlucky.
So the two fatalities that occurred on Maui occurred basically because the shark bit in an area where the victim bled out before help could come. So
All
it's
right.
important to make that distinction.
We're down to 10 minutes and we have a lot of questions. What happens if our coral reefs die? What does it cause? Does it cause more beach erosion? Ruth?
Yeah, I mean, if our corals die, we will get a lot of beach erosion. We will have a reduced number of fish and other species. There are thousands of species that live in the reef. And we will have no platform for tourism. So economically, it will be a disaster. And we will have, you know, with sea level rise, it is a huge issue in the Pacific and Pacific Islands in general, what the declining habitat, reef habitat. It's you know, I think it's something that is avoidable, and we should do something to avoid it.
All right. From Hannibal via Twitter, what are the effects of the Fukushima nuclear plant on fish in Hawaiian waters? Sean, may I toss that to you?
Well, we haven't, the work that's been done, and there's been studies done from health department folks, both here and on the mainland, and with pretty minimal, if any, changes in levels of radiation. And so we haven't seen much on that perspective. We do see marine debris more. The boats where we fish is up in the North Pacific where the gyre is, and there's quite a bit more marine debris. That'd be tsunami associated, but what it means here, I don't see any impact in our fishery so far.
And I can tell you that all the marine debris, and we've probably tested more than or close to 200 pieces since the Japanese marine debris began arriving. Many of it very early on with the State Department of Health with their Geiger counters, and we have not seen anything that approaches above background level.
William, a question for you. Have you been made aware of the turtle slaughtering going on the Waianae coast? What is being done about this?
We've had reports of poaching going on. We've not had information that have led to confirming. So there are folks that are saying there is a lot of turtles that are in this area. I don't see them anymore. There could be a number of reasons. They could have eaten all of the limu in that area and moved off to another area. They could be headed to French frigate shoals to lay eggs. But I can tell you that we've had reports, but in terms of having credible evidence to show that poaching is going on, I haven't seen that yet.
Are officers sort of increasing their look at the area?
We certainly have made the officers aware, and they are taking extra steps to survey the area and actually do it at the times where folks are reporting that things are happening.
If somebody sees that, what should they do?
Well, if it's during the day and the DOCAIR officers are available, actually call 587-0077. If it's in the evening and DOCAIR officers are not available, call 911. The officer can show up and start the case, and we can get a DOCAIR officer to take the case over.
Okay, from Chris in Kihei, could nurseries on a large scale be effective for overfishing? Any thoughts on that?
In this case, I'm assuming nurseries means some form of replenishment. If we had enough money, we could do anything. One of the issues is creating hatcheries for fish replenishment is very, very expensive, and so that's why it hasn't occurred to date, other than fish that can serve a purpose of aquaculture and replenishment at the same time. So moi.
Yeah, moi was actually raised at Oceanic Institute and introduced stock replenishment in the windward side, Kaneohe Bay and up there.
Yeah,
but it's very expensive. I think each fish was like $1.50 a piece or something at that point.
A costly enterprise.
We've done a lot of mullet in the Waiakea area and Hilo. Again, expensive to do, but the fishermen appreciated them.
Yeah, something to consider. Nova via Twitter, will dying coral reefs negatively affect surf breaks such as Pipeline, Sunset Beach, etc.? Ruth?
So a lot of the surf breaks actually have very little coral on them because they're very, very high energy. And so, where you've got that much energy, corals just can't survive. And so they're bare substrate already. So I think the answer is no.
All right, thank you. Sean, may I ask this question? From the Big Island, what is the source of mercury in marlin and other animals in the ocean?
The mercury that you hear about that's popular in the press sometimes is a natural occurring mercury. And I think that there are NGOs that use that as a vehicle to advance their position, say that. But it is a natural occurring mineral, and there's all kinds of studies that have been done, but most recent studies have concluded that mercury is offset by selenium, and so it's not really a health issue like it sometimes is brought forward. So there's a lot of work that's been done, and it's certainly available for
There's
research.
certainly more benefits to eating fish than the risk.
All right, from Michael via Twitter, do we even know how much herbicides and pesticides affect Hawaii's water and coastlines? Ruth, is that something you've looked at in vis-a-vis coral?
I mean, it is, there's definitely detrimental effects of herbicides and pesticides on corals, and that's because they have plants living inside them. And so when you think about that, there are some crazy things that go on with coral health that we don't know a lot about. In fact, there's a lot of discussion of what Roundup is doing to corals and coral health, and that is certainly ongoing work at this time. And I think we'll have a very definitive answer on what sort of concentrations, what the effects are in the not too distant future.
All right, from Mariam Mililani, why do we allow spearfishing and line fishing from the Gold Coast to Ala Moana? This is dangerous for swimmers and snorkelers. If we allowed fish to repopulate, it would take pressure off Hanauma Bay. We touched on this. William, any thoughts? Has there been any thought on sort of setting up additional fishing controls in some areas off of Waikiki?
Of course, there always are requests, and then we have to balance that with, people that have been doing it for 100 years, as well as Native Hawaiians who have, I have the responsibility to protect the traditional and customary practices. So we will continue to analyze the situation. I think in that situation, she's probably referring to the swim area in Ala Moana Beach Park. There's technically
I think she was talking about the
Natatorium.
Waikiki Diamond Head area, the same.
What about recreational fishing permits? Would that be some sort of solution, some way to not have just a massive amount of it going on in short periods?
Well, I think the recreational fishing permit or license would give us a handle of how many actual participants there are, and that's good information for management in general.
So that might be something to consider in the future.
It's actually a subject of a legislative bill right now.
Right.
Speaking of banning spearfishing, I'm not against spearfishing, and I'm not against jet skis either. But I just think that policy can be made to put them in the right places and keep them out of the right place, or the wrong places, right places, however you want to look at it. And I want to commend William and his board for approving the West Hawaii rules package off West Hawaii, which actually banned scuba spearfishing, which is not a traditional Hawaiian practice unless tradition started 50 years ago.
Right. All right, let's get to our final questions. We only have a few minutes. From Tom in Kaimuki, could the depletion of fish in the ocean be the reason for the increase in sharks looking for food? Really briefly, anyone's opinions on that?
I think that's a really good idea, and it's not proven. I mean, certainly if our reefs are depauperate, it's probably going to change the behavior of the major predators on those reefs. Could change how far they wander, how alert they are. I think it's certainly worth looking at, and some of the data that are coming in now will help with that, but we need more.
Sean, your thought on that?
Well, I think that you really have to define it much more narrow than the oceans, because there are pelagic fish that are all over the place, and as William alluded to, some of the large scale industrial type fishing, and I don't like the word industrial fishing, but commercial type fishing and on big boats, and they do take significant amounts of fish, and they do take some sharks, but I don't think that I can't really subscribe to the idea that depletions of fish on a large scale, on an oceanic scale, are contributing to shark declines. Maybe it's more inshore than
I
offshore.
think we're talking, it's probably inshore, but offshore is a whole nother ballgame.
William, your thoughts?
Well, I was going to only add that, you know, the population at the top of the pyramid can only be relative to the bottom. So if we were in such dire straits, I don't think we'd have the number of sharks that we have today.
I got a paper here you should read.
All right. I love the controversy about it. We're nearing the end of our show. We've got a lot more questions, so we'll try to handle some of them in our after show segment, which viewers can check out online under the show. For the next couple of weeks, Insights will be taking a short break. When we return on March 27th, we'll be discussing food. Most of the food we eat in Hawaii is imported, and only a fraction of our food is grown here. We have a growing network of small farmers cultivating food for our state. What do we need to know about Hawaii's farm products and about what we put in our mouths? Is the food we eat safe? How organic is organic food? How sustainable is it to stock our grocery shelves with fruit and vegetables sold out of season? Do you know what you're eating? That's next time on Insights on PBS Hawaii. I'm Malia Mattoch. Thank you to our guest tonight. Very interesting conversation. A hui hou.